The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
We're almost ready to start this. This will be great. We'll take this program, we'll have it available. It'll be available on cable media in Fall River, and then we'll be showing it here in the park and the theater. Okay? Any questions? Dr. Philip Sylvia's here today? Yes?
There's also a nice picture of you with that article today.
I don't know anything about it. All I did was sit there and took a picture. Dr. Sylvia wrote the definitive biography on Sarah Ann Lewis. Who's Sarah Ann Lewis? It's Sarah Ann Lewis, right? She was the first black graduate of Bridgewater. This is back in the 1800s. Okay, right after the Civil War. Her father, she's born and raised in Fall River. No, not born and raised, born in Fall River, but raised in Fall River. Her father worked at the Fall River Line. The Fall River Line was the #1 employer for people of color in Fall River. Because, you know, the textile mills did not employ people of color. The unions would not allow people of color to join. So if you're looking around our park and looking for pictures of black textile workers, you won't find any because there were none. Okay? But the Fall River Line, all set? But the Fall River Line employed a lot of, I have a small exhibit out there on the Fall River Line. Sarah's father worked on the Fall River Line. Sarah's sister, Mary Wilson Lewis, married Lewis Latimer. Lewis Latimer worked with Thomas Edison. Lewis Latimer created the filament for the light bulb. Okay? Lewis Latimer is buried in Fall River. Lewis Latimer has been dead in Fall River longer than he was ever living in Fall River because he never lived in Fall River. We still claim him. We still claim him as a Fall River icon. There's a picture of him out there. Okay? And so that's a connection back to the Fall River Line again. All right? So there's a lot of history here, a lot of interesting stuff, and this New Bedford boy is proud to say, I love Fall River history. Okay? And I love talking about it. So one of the partners that's been helping us to interpret Fall River history is the organization, the Bristol Black Collective. Okay? We've worked together now for 3 years, presented a number of different programs. The Bristol Black Collective is our partner for this program. We're also our partner for the programs next week, Wednesday, and the table runner party on table runner presentation on Wednesday, and then the other one on the Rhode Island Regiment on Saturday. So, Tia Castellano is the head of the Bristol Black Collective. So I want to introduce Tia to you today, and also. T is going to introduce Rufai, and I think you know Rufai already. Rufai and I go way back from when I was working at the Weather Museum, so we know, and we're planning on doing some other projects together. Like I would love to talk about Paul Cuffey. Paul Cuffey Park. Have you been to it, the Weather Museum? Yes. Thank you. That was my baby. Yeah, when I was vice president of the Weather Museum. We want to talk about Paul Cuffey because the Cuffey family right here in Westport. I know Westport likes to think it's greater New Bedford, but Westport is like greater Fall River too. So we'll talk about that. We claim the Cuffey family. We also want to talk about the whaling industry. We've had 2 presentations here about Fall River and the whaling industry, and we're going to combine our talents to do that again. So I'm looking forward to a good partnership with Rufai, okay? So, right now I'll introduce Tia, and Tia will take it from there.
Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of the Bristol Black Collective, I want to thank you for your patience as we prepared for this program today, and for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn program. Again, my name is Tia Castellano, and I am the Executive Director of the Bristol Black Collective, a community organization dedicated to preserving and celebrating Black history, culture, and contributions while creating a space for education, dialogue, and empowerment right here in our community. This Lunch and Learn series is designed to bring people together in a welcoming space to learn, reflect, and engage with powerful stories that shape our shared history. Today's program Telling the Stories of Runaways explores the courage, resistance, and determination of those who sought freedom through the Underground Railroad and the networks of people who risked everything to help them. These stories remind us that history is not just something we read, it's something we carry forward through learning, storytelling, and action. It is truly an honor to introduce today's presenter, Park Ranger Rufai from the New Bedford Whaling National Park. Ranger Shadao has served with the National Park since 2014. He is a graduate of the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, where he earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and he is currently pursuing his master's degree in public policy. A native of Ghana, he became a naturalized United States citizen after serving in our United States Army, including 1-year tour in Afghanistan in 2006. He now lives here in Fall River with his wife and 2 children. Ranger Shardau brings not only professional expertise, but also a deeply personal connection to this history. As a child in Ghana, he lived for a time in a castle where enslaved Africans once were in prisons, with the chains still hanging from the ceilings. That experience helped to shape his understanding of the transatlantic slave trade and the enduring legacy of slavery. Today, he shares these powerful histories with visitors through talks, tours, and educational programs focused on figures such as Frederick Douglass, Henry Box Brown, and many freedom seekers connected to this region. Known for his warm and engaging style and passion for storytelling, Ranger Shardau has immersed himself in the rich history of New Bedford and the Underground Railroad. His work helps to ensure that these stories of struggle, resilience, and hope continue to be told for future generations. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ranger Rufai Shardau.
Again, I work for the New Bedford Whaling National Historical Park Ranger. As I'm referring to national parks, there are 400 national parks in the country. One of them is in New Bedford right here, and we focus on what? Whaling. We have what we call Partnership Park. So we work with the Whaling Museum, Historical Society, and the local organization in New Bedford to bring this rich history to everybody. So as a park ranger, again, and then my next slide is about, I just also want to give a thank to Tia. She designed this amazing flag. And also thank you to Jim for giving me this space to bring the story of New Bedford and Fall River and together. So now thank you, and also thank each one of you for making time for this wonderful presentation. And again, I apologize for running late. I know we're behind time, so. All right, so what I do as a park ranger, we offer walking tours. So from starting end of May through October, these are the walking tours we offer. Please try and join us for a walking tour. Right here you see this is my research on Henry Melville and Douglass. So I do a walking tour in the footsteps of Douglass and Melville in New Bedford. I also talk about what? Whaling. I'll just focus on whaling and also the Underground Railroad. And then we have topics like what? Blubber and Bones, New Bedford and New Life, Extraordinary Whales, Women in Whaling. So you can see we are trying to track every story to very inclusive world which we share at New Bedford. So hopefully you can join us May through September, October for a walking tour in New Bedford. Next slide is about what? This is what I'm working on right now. I'm working on what? Fall River Underground Railroad. Again, I think I've now come across, there's a little research in Fall River, not that much yet. So I'm working to build on that, the part of Fall River, and bring the Fall River history to the world, to everybody. And so this is a draft right now that I'm working on, and I'm going to work with Tia, and hopefully June 10th, we can do a walk, a tryout, a walk in Fall River, hopefully. But again, the idea is to bring the history of Fall River to the limelight. Because Fall River is not well known. Even when I was living down in Fall River for the past 20 years, I never knew nothing about the Underground Railroad. Nothing. Till I started working at New Bedford. So again, this is a story that I think needs to be to be told. So hopefully you can join me on the walking tour in soon, and then we can build on it. Next is again, of course, we have to be grateful and thankful and acknowledge our First Nations, Indigenous. This is their land. From here all over the world all over the country is their land. So the Wampanoag in New Bedford, the Pocasset, so these are people I always have to acknowledge. Even though I've only given them one slide, it's not enough, but just to acknowledge the indigenous people before we move on to our program. And then my next slide, again, I was born and raised in Ghana. Before I started Underground, I always take people back to Africa, back to Ghana, back to West Africa especially, where what you see right here are different slave castles built in West Africa. Some are still standing right now. So all these European countries build different slave forts to transport, to kidnap and transport Africans to the New World. What we don't talk about is how slavery derailed Africa, the culture, the tradition, the economic. Basically destroy over years, destroy Africa. And that's what Africa is trying to find its own identity. So I always go back to just to bring an idea of what was African started back in the 1700s. My next slide is this is the map of Ghana right here. Also, this is just Ghana. What you see under Ghana, Ghana is 300-mile coastline. What you see right here are all slave castles. Ghana was once called the Gold Coast. And the first European country to set foot is the Portuguese, right? They were the first people to set foot in Ghana as to trade gold. And eventually, that transitioned into a whole different story about kidnapping and transporting people. Next slide. Again, just to give you Ghana, even though it looks like Africa, but these are the forts that you see right here are in Ghana. Fort Williams that you see at the top is where, as a kid, I grew up. I was living here. So this is Fort Williams. So what you see right here, let me see, what you see right here, these 2 bedrooms are the living quarters of my parents. Right here you see is my father's office. So he goes one step to his office. The ground floor is where the prisoners were kept. So back then, that was where all the slaves were kept before they were transported. This one you see right here is the stairway to our living quarters. And somewhere right here, I know is the entrance to the prisoners. So around 5 or 6, I was living in this castle right here that were built by the British. And what you see right here is this will be the door of no return. Now it was sealed when we were living there. So again, all these houses were once places that were kept Africans before they were transported. And that was my story about Fall River and New Bedford. Right? I live in Fall River and I work in New Bedford. And look at this map, you can see the water, the maritime. But these 2 cities, the maritime play a huge role in their history. And I came to find out that some of the men living in Fall River were working on the whaling ships in New Bedford. And you can see in this picture right here what the whaling history was. This is how whaling was hunted. So New Bedford became the whaling capital of the world, right? Because of its natural location, which I'll share with you guys. If you look at this map right here, you see Nantucket, New Bedford, and Fall River, right? So Nantucket right here was the leading island in whaling because of its location. But Nantucket as an island could not expand with the expansion of whaling. That is, the size of the ships were increasing more laborers were coming into the picture, right? And they have to go to the Atlantic, to the Pacific Ocean, to the Arctic Ocean. So eventually, what? New Bedford took over the whaling industry. Because of what? Because of this natural resources. So what you see right here, this is the Acushnet River right here. This channel is 20 to 30 feet deep, naturally. Naturally, there's no drainage, 30 to 40 feet deep, right? And you can see what? 755, the first person to come here was Joseph Russell. The second person, Joseph Roach, which goes back to my friend who's a Quaker, right? So he brought whaling from Nantucket to what? To New Bedford. And that changed the face of whaling. Okay, when he came to New Bedford, that's what, so New Bedford took over what? 2,000 whaling voyages to the Pacific, Atlantic for this product. Right? And then, again, the Quakers right here. So all this is what changed, what set New Bedford from other coastal towns all the way from Maine to the what, South Carolina, because of this little location, the Acushnet. And then you can see what I have, a little presentation right here. You can see a slope, right? And then so around this time, 1800, is when Fall River came into the picture of whaling, which I'll show you a little brief topic. So these are the different sizes of whale ships. And this is over 400 tons, carry over 30 to 35 men on the whaling voyage. And whaling voyage was 4 to 5 years. So if you are runaway enslaved living in New Bedford, right, what will you do? So the whaling voyage became what? Part of the Underground Railroad. A lot of people escape and they'll come back and make money. And we have right here some of the what? Look at this, over 30 oil refineries alone, all the way down the waterfront was in New Bedford. That was why it's the richest city in the world. You can see all these oil refineries. And then people can see them right here, the Irish boys, the Cape Verdeans, the African Americans. So I want to focus my story today on what the African Americans ran away and enslaved. So my next story again is, so I know we spoke about this briefly, about the Underground Railroad, right? Houses, routes, places. So I'm going to jump on to my next point to give you an idea of the Underground Railroad. It's what? Route. Escape what? Route. You can see New Bedford right here. This map is old, just upgraded. Because you don't see Fall River and other towns in it. Because there's a new research coming out about Fall River, about Albany, New York, and other towns, New London. Right? So this map need to update to include other cities. But this is the idea of what an underground railroad means. People escaping from towns to towns, from place to place, to houses. And then we have what? Right here. I always call New Bedford as the noisy neighbor when you talk about the Underground Railroad. And Fall River as the quiet neighbor. Right? What does that mean? If an escaped slave escaped from the south, guess where they come in to look for him? New Bedford. So New Bedford was known as what? The den Negro of what? Thieves and what? Protectors. So in the south, right, look at, they were protesting, right, boycott buying of winter oil, right? So if the idea was, if they boycott buying oil, then New Bedford will stop what? Bringing in their enslaved people from the south. So the south, well known, this city, New Bedford was well known in the south. Next slide is what? These are the two houses we know are part of the Underground Railroad. This is Fall River, right? Dr. Fix, the good doctor, right? 2023, he became a designated. And this house has been there was 2001. And this is the first free home of who? Frederick what? Douglass. So my goal is when I started working in Fall River, this house will be included. But this house is well known. So these are the two what are designated Underground Railroad. And as I mentioned, New Bedford are called the sister cities. Like I can see here, right here is what? Frederick Douglass, right? It's what? Douglas was what? A city of what? Refuge. She's Elizabeth, who was born in what? Rhode Island, right? Before she moved to New Bedford, to Fall River, right? Play a huge role. In Fall River, what, as elsewhere, the anti-slavery cause was what? Upheld by brave what? Men and women, right? Who, in the face of popular prejudice, stood firm of what? Oppressed. So Elizabeth played a very, very, very huge role right here in New Bedford, making sure that the runaway enslaved that came to the Fall River were not taken back to slavery. And sometimes they move them to other towns like Boston or Freetown or whatever they can that are not well known. And then we have here who? Douglas, right? Spoke in New Bedford right here. I'll talk to you more about Frederick Douglass, right? If there's no struggle, there's no what? Progress. Those who profess fear of freedom and yet what? Depreciate agitation are men who want what? Crops without proving up the ground. Right? Douglass right here in Fall River talking about Douglass. But most research, you don't hear much about his time right here in Fall River. Again, the idea of this is hopefully I'll try to figure out how much more I can bring out about what his involvement in what? In Fall River. And then we're gonna go to my next slide. Everybody know about this guy, right? Andrew what? Andrew Robson. His son was also Andrew Robson Jr., right? So Andrew Robson was from Pennsylvania. He was a Quaker. Came to New Bedford, married, and lived in New Bedford. And he was a strong, strong abolitionist. Very, very wealthy. Very, very, he was rich, involved in it. You can see all he owns a wharf, he owns mechanic and merchant banks, founder of what institution? He was born in 1787. But Andrew Robson, as far as I'm going to show you more about him, and my next slide is about who? Nathaniel B. Borden. So I don't know if somebody can tell me if there's any connection to Lizzie Borden. I don't know yet, hopefully, but Nathaniel B. Borden was also an abolitionist. He was born in 1801, right? And he married the sister of Elizabeth, Sarah. And now here you can see vice president and of the Fall River Anti-Slavery Society. And Andrew Robson and Nathaniel B. Borden, this is their homes right here. This house is demolished. This will be located behind the city hall where the Webster is, the Webster Bank is going right now, right? Demolished in 1930s. This house is still standing in Fall River, in New Bedford, still standing. This is what it looked like in 1820 when it was built. Now this is what it looks like right now. And this is across the National Park Service. Still standing. And talks about Andrew Robson's involvement in the Underground Railroad. And then we have the two of them, right? Andrew again, and his son, right? Some of you know Fall River, the Robson Street, right? Played by what? Andrew, his son. He was also born in New Bedford before he moved to Fall River where he got married. So we can see the connection between Fall River and New Bedford, playing a huge, huge role. And then Andrew Robson right here. So, and then we can have, this is the directory that will tell you who Andrew Robson was in the anti-slavery society, 1836, right? Andrew Robson as a counselor, right? By the next meeting, he's what? He's the vice president. Because most of his time that he spent was to make sure runaway enslaved that comes to New Bedford or Fall River were protected. And he doesn't understand why would a fellow human being be enslaved. And then right here, you can see the connection. He said what? You may recollect the circumstances, right? That took place a few weeks since the attempt what? To capture a slave who escaped to this place in a vessel from Norfolk, Virginia. They came at the time very near capturing him, right? We have just now got information that this owner has offered high reward for him, and that they have actually formed all their plans to take him without delay. We think it's imprudent for him to be here after the boat arrives. Then they will take him to Fall River. Because Fall River was quiet place, was not known. So they will not come to Fall River. But then from Fall River, probably will go to other places. So this is from Andrew Robson towards Bedford. And we believe the house I showed you earlier on, we believe that's the house probably this slave he was kept. And you can go on as Douglas right here, right? This was what? Freddie Douglas. The last book he wrote, the Douglas wrote is like the Life and Times, was spoke about what? He said, without these people, this first thing about Douglas. As we go to the next line, I'm going to jump here quickly right here. Who do we see right here? Douglas mentioning. Andrew Robson, right? And who else? Bedford. So Douglas was grateful to them. Douglas, some of you know Samuel Sewell, right? The Hutchinson, Arnold Buffon, right? And then we have what? John Brown. And the last is about who? Chase. Right? So Douglas always grateful to these people. But he know without these abolitionists, without these people, he would still be enslaved or still working at the waterfront. So in his book, he wrote a lot of names that he was grateful to. Then we have all these houses that we see right here are what? Underground Railroad. Dr. Fisk, right? Israel Society, Abraham Bowen, and the Abian Slate House. So again, this will be part of the walking tour I'm planning to offer, hopefully in June, and we can go to these houses and talk more about their role in the Underground Railroad. So far, so good? Yes. All right. So again, it's fascinating sometimes again, but all these houses, people don't know about them. People don't know about Fall River, nothing about it. These houses play a role, in the stories. All right, and then we have what I call second wave abolitionists. What does that mean? Second wave abolitionists were interested in ending slavery. First wave abolitionists is like around 1700 to the 1815s. They were what? Slave trade. And that was abolished in 1808. And then the next group of people were what? The second wave abolitionists, like Lucy, Elizabeth, Albion, and his wife. And I found out Albion, as a young guy, was working on whale ships in New Bedford. Right? So all these people that you see right here play a huge role in the life of African or runaway enslaved. And this is what I call second wave abolitionists. And then we have in Fall River, right? We have this petition that was sent out in 1860 by what? Dr. Fisk, right? And you can see here, what? Do not hand over to his master a slave who has what? Escaped from his master and come to you. Let him what? Live among you wherever he likes, in whatever town he chooses. Do not oppress him. This is from the Bible. And then, so you can see Dr. Fix, which on our next slide, was what? One of the petition right here. Dr. Fix right here. And you can see what? The undersigned citizens of what? Fall River, Massachusetts. So again, Dr. Fitz was called what? The good doctor, right? He was a guy who was able to also play a role in the lives of African Americans. And my next slide is what? This is the book I mentioned, Buffon, Elizabeth, Anti-Slavery Ministries. She shared wonderful stories, wonderful history about the life of African Americans, both in what? New Bedford and Fall River. Thence, you say what? Will reach New Bedford and what? Thence be sent by an abolitionist there to what? Fall River. That's why I say Fall River was the quiet neighbor, right? People don't know much about Fall River, but New Bedford was well known. People were hunting them. And the story for Fall River is fascinating. So, we're going to keep going. And then this is what we call the Liberty Hall. This has a very interesting story. This building was burned down in Fall River. What you see right here is a bell. So if you go to Fall River, some of you are familiar with Fall River, William Street and Peter Street. New Bedford, sorry about that, New Bedford. There's a leftover of the chunk of this bell, which I'll share a story about. Still to remind what slavery looked like in New Bedford. So this was built in 1795, and we went through all these stages. The first floor was storefront. The second floor was where people would come and talk, abolitionists, including what? Douglas. They would come and give speeches. They would come and give talk. And then right here, you can see my next slide. Right here is a story about what? A slave hunter. Right, he came to New Bedford and looking for his slave. Because again, and then he said what? He heard when he arrived in New Bedford, the bells were rung to announce his coming. Right? And when he warned his slave that aided in his escape, that everywhere he was what? Badly treated. Then he went on. The truth was, as we afterward learned, that he arrived at 9 o'clock in the morning, just as the school bell was ringing. And he felt disrespected. Because some of you know, in 1850, Congress has passed 2 laws, right? There was one in 1793 called the Fugitive Slave Act law, and in 1850. This law is just simple. All runaway enslaved must be what? Return to their owners. So if I'm escaping slavery, I'm in Fall River, and this lady can just grab me and take me back to slavery. Right? So cities like Fall River and New Bedford stood against it. So when again, that bell has nothing to do with him, but he thought the bell was to warn enslaved. And for that again, because for New Bedford was well known. And then again, this is what this is right here is William Street. So the building is right here, and then this map right here in 1856. These are the distribution of black people living in New Bedford. Most of them were what? Runaway enslaved. And this is a story about a guy called what? Dr. Thomas Bain. Interesting. So he was born into slavery, escaped, caught, and a dentist bought him. Because he was smart, he was trained to become what? A dentist. When he escaped slavery in 1855, he ended up what? In New Bedford. This what you see right here is the state directory. On top is other physicians. And you can see whose names here. Thomas Bain. So again, imagine escaping slavery and coming to New Bedford and able to practice the skill. And the story about him is fascinating. The first year, the doctor made $3,000 of their money. $1,000 came from him, his services. And guess what? Was he paid? He didn't get paid for them. So he eventually again was born what? Samuel Nixon, and he became Thomas Bain. And in slavery or runaway enslaved, they changed their names a lot. There's a lot to hide what? From capture. Even Douglas changed his name. So Thomas Bain eventually honed. This is the story. Some of you have seen this book, The Underground Railroad. If you have not, this is the most written first narrative stories of runaway slaves. Fascinating book. William Steele is what? A conductor of the Underground Railroad from Philadelphia. He has written that fake. Every enslaved person that came from the south go to Philadelphia, when they make it to the north, they will write to him. And he has all their stories written down. All their stories. And you can see right here, that is what? Thomas Bain. And what I love about this is the next one. He said what? DSA, right? Direct box office, direct my what? Letters to what? To post office. So now he has his own post office, has his own office, right? And then the what about this? What? Look at this right here. He made what? He lost $550. Now money, almost $25,000. So imagine again coming to New Bedford and making this much money. While as a slave, And he said what? 350 was what? Insured. What? 61, before the what? Civil War. And then here again, he wants books to pursue his studies. He's writing to what? William Steele, corresponding back and forth. Everything in that third book. And then what? After the Civil War, he became what? A state senator. First lady in Virginia. Went back and became a one-term state senator. Became what? A what? A Republican. Right? But it might, again, look, coming to New Bedford, ran away, working as a dentist, making money. What are his chances if he had not escaped? Debt. And what about the 4 million? There were 4 million for the Civil War. 4 million were enslaved. If they had a chance like Douglas, like this guy, what will African Americans and white people life look like? Educational, economic, healthcare, all that look like right now. The gap is what? Is wide. He made it. Douglas made it. The next guy also is this guy right here, George Timo, also a Republican. He wrote a book, right? God made man what? Made a slave. He also came to New Bedford. Right? And he said what? In New Bedford, I passed under what? Fugitive. Which once commanded what? The sympathy of that patriotic and generous people. And he went on. Once there, you are what? Free indeed. And then he went on and called what? I have always heard this what? The highest what? Adoration. So New Bedford played a huge role in the life of what? These people. And then some of you have known this guy. Everybody heard about Louis Temple? Anybody? So this guy was also from Virginia. He came to New Bedford in the 1840s. And guess what? He changed the face of whaling through the invention of what? The toggle harpoon. As a blacksmith. And this harpoon increased the catch of what? Whales. Formerly enslaved. I always have to apologize for the whales because a lot of them were killed. But again, coming to New Bedford and able to practice your skill and getting paid for what you do. Then we have what? The guy left, Henry Bass what? Brown. 27 hours in that box. Let's think about that for 1 second. Hours. You can see the box, right? 3 feet, 2 inch long by 6 wide. Deep. We have a replica of this box in our building. That sometimes we do the program with the kids. But again, Henry Bass Brown. We don't have enough evidence, but he came to Fall River to live briefly with the what? In the home of what? Dr. Fisk. But that's an ongoing research to get more of his living in Fall River right here. Then we have, again, Nathan, like, and my friend mentioned, she was born in Fall River to the Mingo family, right here, right? Isaac and what? And Mingo. And she owned this house. In New Bedford. Again, African Americans, middle class, right? Owning these houses and other business at the waterfront during slavery days in America. And And this is the house that welcomed who? Frederick Douglass. And she did what? Cakes, shortcake, ice cream. This is what she was making money with. And then we have the Johnson house. Let me see if I can play this for you guys. Let's see if this will work. This is the home inside the house. Okay, let me see if it's not working. Alright, let me skip this for now. Oh, it's working. Okay, so this is the house, the Johnson house, right? This is what inside look like right now. So if you have not been to the house, please make some time. You can see the house. This is the living room right here, right? And then if you go through here, it's kind of slow right now. Sorry about that. So this part of the house is where Douglass lived when they came to New Bedford. And then if you go through inside this part, you can see a little bit of exhibit of Douglass and the family. The house he came to live when he came to New Bedford, which I'll talk more later on. So let's go to the slide. Again, this is the Frederick Douglass and his wife Anna. So Douglass was born in 1818, I mentioned earlier on. He met Anna while they were living in Maryland. Anna, she was a free black woman when they met. He was still a slave. He was not educated until he moved to Baltimore. One of the owners saw interest in him and she started teaching him the alphabet. Right? And then he started teaching himself how to read and write. So never had a formal education, but when you read his book, his work is fascinating. The first time I read his work, I have to read it 4 times just to understand what he's saying. That was a speech, what is the July 4th to the Negro person. I have to read 4 times just to understand. And this guy who never had a formal education. And then he met Anna, and then when he escaped in September of 1838 from Maryland to New York and ended up in New Bedford. And when they came to New Bedford, this is the document. Not this exact one, but he used a sailor's document to escape slavery. It's called what? The Protection Papers. Back then, people who sailors have to travel, they have to hold to travel with it. So Douglass escaped slavery, dressed like a sailor. In the train, he was asked of his document. He said, luckily, the conductor only saw the sail. If the conductor had looked the age, the hair, the height, he would be in trouble. He said, luckily, he just saw the sail. And that's how Douglass ended up escaping from Maryland to to New Bedford, through New York. This document. And then we have, this is Rosaria, Louis, and Charles. Guess what? They were born in New Bedford. Virginia was born in Lane, Massachusetts. When he left New Bedford, his next town was Lane. And then the last young lady, Annie, was born in Rochester, but she died at the age of 9 of heart congestion. But this is the family of Douglass. And the 2 of them fought during the Civil War. If you see the movie Glory, please, yes, about some of these men. I'm gonna keep moving. This is the for New Bedford right here. Douglass as a laborer. After he lived in the house, he moved to his own apartment. We believe this is a boarding house in New Bedford. He moved right here. And you can see a directory, 1839. Douglass as a laborer. Then here he became a reverend. Because in Maryland, he was already preaching in Maryland before he came to the north. He was already preaching in Maryland. So when he came here, he became a reverend. And these are the churches. You can see right here the Methodists, which most African Americans and were associated with. Then my next slide is what? In my bonding, he said what? Speaking to my what? Colored friends in the little house on 2nd Street. What? He said, remember I said, what? Record the days I spent in the little house, right? Of sexting, steward, class leader, and what? Local preacher, as among the happiest days of my life. This is about freedom. Quote about all he mentioned, how happy he was to make me a home. Mr. Johnson assured me. In New Bedford, there was close to 2,000 or so enslaved. Guess what? Not a single enslaved person was taken back to slavery. Not one. In Boston, 2 were taken. In New Bedford, not a single person was taken to slavery. There were mobs who were chasing people out of New Bedford. It's fascinating. Not a single person was taken back to slavery. So then these are more quotes. I now find more. I should have found a more striking, of Baltimore than I found right here in New Bedford. I found employment the 3rd day after my arrival. Douglas said when he made his first $2 shilling, when he clapped the one in his hand, he said, my heart swelled, because that money belongs to me. And you can see how he said, it was to me the starting point of what? New existence. So we always claim he was reborn in New Bedford. And again, he will come back later on to speak in Fall River. So, and then he spoke, his first speech was in Nantucket, 1841. That is where he began his abolitionist speaking. And when they heard Douglas speak, they were moved. For a guy, again, who had no formal education. And then, what's going on? Okay, the next group are what? These are the Piper's family. These are also formerly runaway enslaved that came to New Bedford. So I want to focus on this is 3rd generation. These 2 couples, their son, married. So this is what New Bedford right here. Before the Civil War, there's close to 34 public schools alone in New Bedford. 34 public schools. And this lady had the opportunity to be educated in one of the schools. And her father was one of the Pipers. And she became an educator and an abolitionist. She was born in 1856. Again, let's imagine if she was born in the South. What are the chances? And then 2 stories, Johnson and Thompson. Johnson said what? I thought I will go on a what? Whaling. And then he came to New Bedford. New Bedford was the best place to live. So all these people moved to New Bedford, and they were so happy to just make to the city. And then these are other sites of the Underground Railroad. These are other places, Lewis Temple. These are houses owned by African Americans still standing. Again, imagine coming to New Bedford and having your own home. It's fascinating. And I want to end with this quote right here. This is Douglas. I was now living in what? In the new world. I was wide awake with this advantage. Then Henneberger, Moby Dick, right? The town is perhaps the dearest place to live in what? In all New England. That's fascinating. And then I'm going to leave this quote. I, Daniel Rickerson, historian, have before spoken of the anti-slavery principles of the early inhabitants of New Bedford, growing out of the influence of the Quakers. It is said that one time in the early part of the present century, there was hardly a house in place which had not given a shelter or a sickle to a fugitive slave. Here he found rest and protection. At present, there are probably between 2,000 and 3,000, many of them among what? Respectable and wealthy citizens in their general character as a whole. And they say what? For a number of years, the children have had equal advantage with those of the white population in our public schools. And many of them have been among what? The best scholars. Again, let's imagine, let's reflect and go back. If all these people that have not escaped and still living in what? In the South, what are their chances? So, and then, what do we want the future to say about us? And this is my resources that I work with, and I'm still working on this walking tour. And this PowerPoint is available. Anybody who wants it, I can share that with you guys if you want it. But again, it's an ongoing project that I'm working on. And hopefully next year I can look more into Fall River section and add more stories. But again, we need to bring the story of Fall River to the limelight as New Bedford had more stories. So that's the goal of this project I'm working with Jim and Tia. And then hopefully we can tell more of Fall River story, but there's more to the stories of Fall River. A lot of James Carey, Henry Bass Brown, and many African Americans that came to New Bedford. So any question? Thank you so much. Let's see if I have any questions.
Bedford. Do you have a count for how many there are in each of those cities?
So no, I've not. So what I've counted like 6. So I've counted. Let me see. I've counted. Again, there's more to come because there's the houses. So this is the 4 also I've counted right here, and then this is the first one. Is what we know. What we have a group called Network to Freedom. They designate a house to be underground based on what evidence they have. So right now we only have this house right here. But we know these houses are also part of the story, right? So as I know, these 4 or 5 houses I have. And then the cemetery behind the Fisk house, some of you know the cemetery. There's some names, historical names, that we start to look more into that story, you know. So for houses like 4 or 5 right now, but hopefully we can get more to the stories as we dive deep into the history of Fall River. You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious, you said there were several thousand slaves who were living in the area at one time. How many stayed? How many went on to stay?
It's a good question. So what I've come across is, because of some of them left their family behind when they came to the north, enslaved. So like for instance, George Timo, he went back to look for his wife and daughter, right? So most of them went back to look for their families. So right now, only the Pipers, we have evidence, some of them descendants. But most of them, we don't have descendants living in this area. Because again, most of them were escaping from something. So when that thing was gone, they went back to rebuild or to look for their families. And the sad part is some of them were sold to the deep south, right? Louisiana, Georgia, and they couldn't make it. So this is why we don't have that, is because we don't have descendants. Most of them went back after the Civil War to look for their families. That's what I've come across in my research.
Yeah, where do we get the flyers that have all the different programs?
Oh, those are at the front desk. You can get those, okay?
Oh, front desk, thank you.
And also, my mailing list. Just wanted to add to that, people ask that question all the time. Why, Fall River has traditionally been one of the whitest cities in Massachusetts until recently. And there's a reason for that. You look at New Bedford and the history here, the black families there. Why did those black families stay there? They were sustained by the whaling industry. A lot of people had opportunities in whaling. In Fall River, it was, we don't want you to be enslaved, but we really don't want you living here. It's like the textile industry. Fall River was about textiles. The textile industry did not embrace black people. Okay, it's a fact here. It's like Other than, as I mentioned earlier, that the Fall River line, that's it. So there was, if people were going to stay here, they would have to live someplace, they'd have to send their kids to school, they'd have to work someplace. And if you couldn't get a job in Fall River, you could move to New Bedford. Now that's why New Bedford is more multiracial and multicultural than Fall River. Now, there is a traveling program called Maritime Routes of the Underground Railroad. Look for it online, okay? And I've asked the professors who created that, I've asked them about Fall River's role in the Underground Railroad. And I suggested, here you have a city that is in textile manufacturing before the Civil War. What are they doing in Fall River? They are making textiles out of cotton picked by slave hands, okay? How many bales of cotton are going from the south coming up to Fall River? Is it possible that you had people hiding, coming up? And wonderful idea. Unfortunately, the ships always left the south and stopped in New York. Okay, then the bales of cotton were put on other ships. So those people disembarked in New York and didn't come straight to Fall River. But imagine if you had cotton coming up from the south, you would think you'd have a whole population of freely, self-emancipated people in Fall River. But that's, anyway, the point of this is we're always asking these questions. I love the fact that we're always trying to find new dimensions and interpretations of it. Borden, Nathaniel Borden. I'm not supposed to mention the name of that other Borden, but Nathaniel Borden and that other Borden were like third cousins. All the Bordens are related. Okay, even that one. Okay, so just a couple of other notes, but all of you are invited to join us for a light lunch, okay, provided by the Bristol Black Collective. And also, if anybody wants to see the films, Safe Houses in Fall River, that one's about the Underground Railroad in Fall River. We have that here. We can play that after this presentation. We also have the film about Frederick Douglass in New Bedford. That, and you come back anytime to see them, but you can't watch them today, okay? So hand this back to Rufai. Any more questions for our expert here?
I just have one question. You do walking tours down in New Bedford.
Yes.
So do you have any of the walking tours at some of these historical buildings, residents that were part
No,
of the
we want to focus in the historical district. I don't hope that's your question. So we have, I have, this is my walking tour right here.
Right.
So I stay within the district.
To the houses.
Yeah, because the walking tour, to be honest with you, we can do to the houses,
Okay.
but it will take 3 to 4 hours.
Okay, that's
I'm honest with you guys. And people don't want to, you don't want to do. So we want within an hour. So we just focus in the district. And sometimes we do special one, and sometimes that will go 2 or 3 hours if people are willing to do it. All right? But like I mentioned to the last stop, let me show you this one right here. This house is right here, right? So Daniel Drayton, right? Some of you know him. He brought almost 55 or so from Washington. He was caught and he spent 4 years in jail. Later on, when he was free, he came to live in New Bedford, and he's buried in New Bedford, right? So all this new Reverend William Jackson is part of the Civil War, right? So all these places we can go, they're still standing, but it's difficult to navigate. And it will take forever to do a walking tour. So that's why we focus just in the district, just New Bedford. The longest place we go is the Johnson House, and then we come back to the waterfront.
Which is downtown?
Which is downtown, yes. So everything is downtown.
Okay.
Yes, downtown area we focus our walking tour. Yes. And we don't go into houses. We go to a location and share the story of that location. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
So what parts of the rural cemetery have this story?
So the cemetery is, a lot of people were buried in the cemetery. That's why. So Daniel Drayton, William Carney, Nathan Johnson, some of them were buried in that. That's why we have that listed. Because some of them were buried in the cemetery. That's why, yes. Yes.
Now, I saw 2 photographs a long time ago. I'm going to try to find out where I saw them, probably on Facebook a long time ago. but I'm not even certain if it was on Facebook. But I remember being moved by it, and it's not the Underground Railroad, but I think still Fall River, and it was, I think it was the Baptist Church on North Main Street, across from the YMCA. I think it's the same building. I remember recognizing it. And there was a formation of Union troops. So I got a kick out of that because it's a place I know, and this is not too far in the past, but it is the past.
So the YMCA on the North Main?
Yeah, there's like that.
So it's not far from the first house?
And another photograph, and I think it might have been the same locale wherever I saw it, of during Reconstruction of a photograph of former slaves, including children, but in like destitute rags, and they were trying to get contributions to contribute, during the Reconstruction for the, the circumstances of people finding themselves in such destitution in the South. So it's just two photographs that are not the Underground Railroad per se, but they're recognizable and identified with it being a Fall Riverite, and I thought that would be, it's in addition to the Underground Railroad. But I'm just fascinated just what was happening in the city then about, the war.
Yeah.
Because I know, like New York, there were riots, people didn't want to get drafted and all that.
Yes.
Some people would pay not to go, they'd pay someone else to go for them. So I know it was complex politics, and it was a major, major change in the country, and it would just be interesting to see how Fall River, of course New Bedford as well, what was taking place then at that moment.
Yeah, I've not seen those pictures, but the YMCA that you mentioned, I know it's not far from Dr. Fick's home. It's just one block. Dr. Fix is on the other side of the YMCA, and then we know for a fact he played a huge role in the Underground Railroad. And the billboarding, the Albion, so there's a lot of issues. So hopefully we can dig more into
very well present that photograph.
It could be. So again, forever history has to come out eventually. Again, just like Jim said, the cotton, the waterfront is right here. The river's right here. They were trading. Who were coming in?
And just one thing that I loved. I loved the whole thing. It was fascinating, stimulating, and I think the last slide, you posed a question, and I thought that was, beautiful because, the history is not dead, right?
It's not.
It's living, and, this is emblematic. We look back to courage and struggle, and there's good reason to do so because, because there are virtues that people were free. You can't be courageous or loving or considerate or thoughtful. It's always a choice. You can't force those things. And there were certain people in the past that facing great difficulty made such choices. And it's important that we remember and commemorate them for all the right reasons as an inspiration for us today.
That's what we do right now. It's what? History has not repeated itself again. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, the Fall River Preservation Society has done a great deal of research, and there's been tours sponsored by the Historic Society.
So I'm working with Isaac.
Isaac Fisk's house.
Yes.
Where it's headquartered.
Yes, so I spoke with him. We were supposed to do something, but they are going through transition. I guess the house, Dr. Fisk's house, will become a museum. That's the goal. But we're still working on, again, the idea is still figuring out forever.
The local historian Ken Champlin has led tours.
Okay. Yes, so again, I'll reach out, I'll talk to you again more. But the idea is, again, to bring this story to Lambda. As I do walking tour in New Bedford, I can relate it to Fall River. And hopefully people can come to Fall River and look at these houses. Thank you. No, we've not.
One of your sources.
Okay. Okay. Oh, wow. What a small man. Yes. Okay. We'll talk about that. Any more questions? So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Everyone's invited out for a light lunch. Please sign up on our mailing list, and hope to see you next week.
I know. You should call it.